Just what are Pakistan's elections all about this time? A country that's broke, beset by radical insurgents on the front lines of global warming. It needs leadership its citizens can trust. Thursday's vote, though, follows a familiar pattern of revolving door politics. Out, former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who first lost his coalition, then his freedom, after feuding with the military-backed establishment. In, a scion of Pakistani politics, Nawaz Sharif, whose return from exile was made possible by a Supreme Court rule change that enabled him to run despite a corruption conviction. The same Sharif, once ousted in a coup, is back in favor. Why? What's the military's calculation in all this? And how does a youthful nation break out of the dynastic politics of old? The third player in Thursday's election is 37-year-old Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, son of assassinated Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto. Why do dynasties dominate so in Pakistan, and what's the alternative? Today in the France 24 debate, we're asking whether it will be revolving door politics again for Pakistan. Joining us from London, Ayesha Siddiqa, Senior Research Fellow at the Department of War Studies at King's College London. Thank you for being with us. All right, Ayesha Siddiqa setting up the video link connection. Joining us from Birmingham in England, Samin Mohsin Ali, Assistant Professor of International Development at the University of Birmingham. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
From Chicago, he's a former advisor to Imran Khan. Azim Ibrahim is director of the New Lines Institute think tank. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And it's a pleasure to welcome back former French consul, French ambassador to Pakistan, former diplomat stationed in Islamabad, Jean-Yves Berthaud. Thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate, where you can react on the hashtag F24debate. The hard reality of Pakistan's volatility made clear on the eve of the vote. The borders with Afghanistan and Iran shut after at least 30 were killed, at least 2 explosions, both in restive Baluchistan province, one targeting an independent candidate, the other from a religious party, a reminder of the rise these days in militant attacks. Eliza Herbert has more.
It's been an election campaign marred by violence. And on the eve of the national vote in Pakistan, more has unfolded. 2 separate bomb blasts went off on Wednesday, leading to dozens of fatalities and injuries. The first outside an independent candidate office in Pishin, an hour or so later at the office of an ultra-conservative party 150 kilometres away.
A motorbike rider approached our office and our colleagues tried to stop him, but they couldn't. And there were no police officers around. After that blast happened, the result was that 10 workers of Jamiat Islami were martyred, and many more were injured.
Both explosions took place in the north of the Balochistan province, not far from the Afghanistan border. The province has seen a surge of militant attacks in recent months from groups including the Pakistani Taliban and the separatist Balochistan Liberation Army that have warned people about voting in the polls. Responsibility is yet to be claimed for the attacks, but authorities say the election will go ahead. It will be the country's first general election since 2018 and comes at a time of both uncertainty and apathy. Allegations of poll rigging have sprung up in recent months, and the country's former Prime Minister Imran Khan remains behind bars, his party barred from the polls.
People were expecting new political faces to emerge after the election and bring a change in the country, but the faces that have come forward will not bring change in our lives.
Tens of thousands of police and military officers were deployed outside more than 90,000 polling stations on Wednesday, with strong security expected to continue throughout the election.
And I think the video link is now up with Ayesha Siddiqa in London. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. Ayesha, before I ask you about what that bystander said about the familiar faces in this poll, a first question about those separate attacks against candidates in Baluchistan province. What do you make of it?
Well, there are 2 things happening. One is that we look at it in context of electoral violence, which is going to happen in other parts of the country as well. I mean, from what I've heard, sources say, security sources, that in Punjab itself, I mean, other than Balochistan, in Punjab itself, there is going to be violence tomorrow. Violence is expected. Balochistan is expected, firstly, because of its electoral violence, but also because of what is happening. There is Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and other militant groups which operate, and violence has been happening in Balochistan for longer. So it's continuation. It's two kind of separate kinds of violences which are happening in Balochistan.
Yeah, and authorities, I'll put it to you, Azim Ibrahim, have been trying to figure it out. We've seen, and Pakistan's come in for criticism of it, the expulsion of Afghans who've been living in the country for a long time. Azim Ibrahim, this militant violence, is this just par for the course in any election cycle?
We do see lots of violence, but now we have a situation now on Pakistan's border where the Taliban have reconstituted itself and have been in power for almost a year, and now they are essentially in full control over that border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. I remember the Pashtun-led Taliban have never really recognized the border. You have Pashtuns on both sides of the border, and many of them claim that the Pashtuns should actually be united. And so this border has always been a bit of a problem. And now with the Taliban reconstituted and in full control, you more than likely will see much more violence in that part.
Jean-Yves Berthaud, when the Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan, many were expecting that Pakistan would kind of be their conduit to the outside world. It hasn't panned out that way, though.
Well, indeed. Well, first of all, everybody remembers the outburst of joy of the new prime minister when the Taliban took power. So Imran Khan was extremely glad, and perhaps a little too much, and that certainly was reproached to him later by the Americans. The Pakistanis thought there would be the go-between the Taliban on one side and the international community and the West on the other side, due to their historical links with America, with some European countries. And, well, it soon showed that the Pakistanis themselves couldn't grant formal recognition to the Taliban government because they were not consenting the political sacrifices that were needed in terms of public freedoms, women's condition, etc.
The relations soured almost immediately between Islamabad and Kabul.
Yeah, the problem was that, well, first of all, the Taliban are people that don't want to have a boss. And that's a very Afghan thing anyway. But the Taliban are no different from other Afghan people. They don't want to be dictated how they should behave politically or culturally. They thought, okay, now we won this battle and we intend to be our own and not to depend on the diktat of a neighbor that has always been extremely intrusive in Afghan affairs, historically anyway. So once that was understood in Islamabad, it made it a bit more difficult for the relationship to be really harmonious. Then there were reprisals and discussions, and then, of course, the Taliban had a tool in their at hand. They had this tool that was the the Taliban of Pakistan, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. And they used it. They used it in a bloody manner as well. And then there were retaliations. And what sort of retaliation can a country like Pakistan envisage? Afghanistan being a landlocked country, it badly needs a way out, and that only way out, almost only one, are the borders of Pakistan, which can lead to Karachi, the harbor, for their trade, for the goods they import, And that, of course, was a weapon that was used by the Pakistani authorities. So things worsened gradually, and indeed the relationship needs to be rebuilt, but I suppose it will be rebuilt after Nawaz Sharif comes back to power.
After Nawaz Sharif comes back to power. Okay, so that's a given already. That's said there by Ambassador Bhutto. Samin Mohsin Ali, fast forward to today. First of all, will people go and vote in those restive areas that border Afghanistan?
It's difficult to say. Obviously, the violence will have a chilling effect on voter turnout. Equally, as Dr. Siddiqa was saying, there is a risk of violence in Punjab as well, and that also threatens voter turnout in the most densely populated part of the country. The crackdown on the PTI over the last many months also is something that might drive voters to stay at home because they feel like not only that there may be a risk of violence, but also that the process is not free and fair, and that their vote won't make a difference. So, and everything is basically managed behind the scenes. So it really, it remains to be seen, and this is something that everyone who is an observer of Pakistani politics will be watching very, very closely, especially what young voters do.
Samin, is that any different from previous elections?
I think a lot of these issues have been there for every election, and even though the elections are competitive, the voter turnout has historically not been very high. But the crackdown on the PTI, the level of the crackdown is perhaps unprecedented. It's not that other politicians haven't faced crackdowns. They have, including Nawaz Sharif in 2017 and 18. But this time, the arrests and abductions and disappearances of PTI supporters, not necessarily senior leadership, but other people who were supporting them or who were campaigning on their behalf, violence against them has been at higher levels, and that might actually cause a significant change in voter behavior.
Yeah, with many candidates jailed or barred from running, the imprisoned Imran Khan urging voters to still go to the polls. He prepared for this moment by pre-recording a message which was aired on X, formerly Twitter.
Parties cannot be destroyed by banning, by disqualifying, because
The election is happening tomorrow, and I encourage you to come out and bring along those you know, because through elections you can shape a better future for yourself and your children.
So there's foresight for you, Ish. Siddiqa, taping an announcement before you go to jail.
Well, I think what's happening is that this is, in a way, a different kind of election. As Samin Mohsin Ali was saying, the kind of election rigging that is happening is unprecedented. 2018 elections, which brought Imran Khan to power, were also manipulated. But the level of manipulation that you see in these elections is unprecedented. What Imran Khan is trying to say is to push back, because one of the perceptions before elections was that perhaps because he's in jail, the senior leadership is in jail, PTI support base is going to feel very frustrated and not come to vote. But this is something which may not prove correct. And what he's encouraging them to do is go and vote, because on the day, on the polling day, rigging becomes then very difficult. Now, what the government is trying to do is very intelligent and a bit naughty. What they're doing is that, for example, there are 10 people or 6 people in one household. They have put their votes in very different, almost opposite, polling stations in opposite direction, which in almost trying to ensure that turnout becomes low. And so they can claim that, we didn't do much. That's how people voted, and the turnout has been low. The government expects, at least in certain constituency, in urban areas in particular, they want turnout to be low. And what Imran Khan is trying to do, and he's trying to battle, is to prove that no, people have come out and people have voted. I think there are also two interesting dimensions here. One is that his party has been salami sliced. There is a lot of repression. Dr. Mohsin Ali, she was talking about repression, which is completely correct. But what is also happening is that they're trying to make sure that they don't, come for elections. But the other thing is that while the party has been held back, the people may still be passionate and try to go and vote against Nawaz Sharif, who is being presented as the next favorite electable for the military. And when the results come, let's see, what would be the voting pattern. So people are either going to make sure that they vote for PTI, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, Imran Khan's party candidates who have not been given a single party symbol, but they have independent individual symbols. So either they vote for them, or so a lot of independent candidates, or people may vote if they come out in droves, then they may actually also hurt Nawaz Sharif. But
and then just vote against him, against the most likely candidate, again, who can vote against him. I want to pick up on the point you just made, just to explain for our viewers here. You talk about symbols. Back in December, the Election Commission withdrew the ubiquitous cricket bat, symbol of Khan's PTI, on ballot papers, citing a failure to first conduct credible intra-party elections that's contested by the PTI. In a nation where 40% of the population is illiterate, it instead imposed random symbols on the candidates. In the capital, Islamabad, PTI-backed candidate Amir Mughal was assigned the brinjal, the eggplant. He claims it presents obvious symbolic references to male anatomy in an attempt to ridicule the party. No matter, he says, he'll make the most of it.
I don't know the double meanings of the brinjal, but I know this thing. The brinjal is now famous symbol in across all Pakistan, and now this has become the king of vegetables.
Okay, so using that eggplant symbol to his advantage, he claims. Azim Ibrahim, the dice are loaded, yet the PTI is really trying to get out the vote.
Yeah, so you have to ask the question, why are we having these elections at this particular time? There was a lot of ambiguity in terms of when these elections would actually occur. It seems that the military establishment are now very confident they have sufficiently dismantled the PTI and dismantled the leadership of Imran Khan to have the election now. And your point about the symbol is actually very pertinent. This is a country, as you indicated, that 40% of the people are illiterate. They only vote usually by identifying the symbols. And on top of that, the media have also banned the mentioning of Imran Khan. So they have essentially...
sorry, the media have banned it, or it's self-censorship?
Yeah, so the military have banned the media from mentioning Imran Khan. And so they are sufficiently confident that the voters will turn out and the PTI will not get a sufficient amount of support. And so there won't be a requirement for the post-electoral election rigging, because that has all been done beforehand. And so this is essentially an extended kind of process to ensure of the degradation of the democratic system in Pakistan continues, and the selected candidate, Nawaz Sharif, assumes office after this election.
The military in the past, it's had candidates it favored, candidates it doesn't. Why is it cracking down this hard on Imran Khan?
Because usually what's happened in the past, when the individual candidate or a leader falls foul of the military, they usually go into self-imposed exile and they go quiet until they can mend their bridges. Imran Khan has been very stubborn in that respect. He's not being quiet as it's expected. He's basically in prison, and he's still managed to get some of the messages out. And his popularity, in fact, has soared since he's gone into prison. And the popularity of the military has declined dramatically. This is an institution that's almost sacred to many Pakistanis, as they see it as the establishment that's keeping the country together. They see it as defending the country from external threats. And people are now coming out in the streets and being critical of the military. So this is a very unprecedented situation, even for the military. In the past, we've had the likes of Nawaz Sharif, who's been in and out of office a number of times, but he simply goes into exile, he mends his bridges, and he comes back, and he plays good. But Imran Khan has simply not been willing to play ball in the same way, hence why they have taken such a strong hand against the dismantling of his party.
Yeah, back in favor. Pakistan's three-time Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif never finished a term. We can show images there with, among the people there you see are his daughter Mariam at a Tuesday rally in Kasur, that's south of Lahore. At age 74, he's back from exile. His disqualification from office over his implication in the Panama Papers tax avoidance scandal is now something of the past. On the campaign trail, Sharif accusing Imran Khan's party of leading the country to ruin.
We will not allow fraudsters to rule Pakistan again. They have ruined Pakistan. We will build Pakistan again, God willing. We will reconstruct this country again. These young people of 30 years, they will build this country by standing shoulder to shoulder with Nawaz Sharif and Shahbaz Sharif, and will play their role to build this country.
Samin Mohsin Ali, Ambassador Bhutto and I are old enough to remember when he tried to sack the head of the military, who instead staged a coup. What do you make of this return of Nawaz Sharif?
Luckily, I'm old enough to remember that as well. It's a cycle as old as time. He came up because of a military patronage. So Ziaul Haq back in the 80s holds party-less elections, and that's where Nawaz Sharif arrives on the political scene. And as you said, he's fallen out of favor and then managed to come back in. And all of the falling out tends to be, over things like foreign policy, especially relations with India, or over trying to exert greater control over foreign policy, which traditionally the military establishment does not appreciate. But it's a pattern that will continue to repeat itself, because Nawaz Sharif, in my opinion, is making a huge mistake. When he was originally ousted in 2017-18 over corruption charges, he did take a stance actually somewhat similar to Imran Khan's. He started campaigning and saying that, they've thrown me out of office and you have to respect the vote, and, I've been hard done by with these corruption charges, which are nonsense. And then he realized that he couldn't push that far enough. He landed in jail, and then he decided to leave the country. So that compromise, I think, has locked us into this cycle, which has been going on for many decades, and which we're not going to be able to break away from, because the military establishment continues to play this kingmaker role. First it was Imran Khan, now it's Nawaz Sharif, and potentially with a weak coalition government coming in after tomorrow's vote, the military will continue to pull strings when it needs to, if it wishes to control politicians in their decision-making.
Yeah, and to Ayesha Siddiqa's point that this could all backfire if PTI supporters don't see their favorite candidate on the ballot. They'll just vote for whoever is against the Muslim League Party of Nawaz Sharif.
Yes, it's entirely possible. There's past precedents for what might be called a sympathy vote. Some would argue that in 2008, when the PPP formed the national government at the head of a coalition, that was because the election followed Benazir Bhutto's assassination, and that there was a sympathy wave in votes. So potentially that might be the case, but the question then arises, to what extent will there be interference in election processes tomorrow? And also not just on the day of tomorrow, but also with the results coming in over the next few days, and with independent candidates switching parties, deciding where they want to ally themselves. And those decisions by independents will only happen in the about 2 weeks following the election. And so that is going to be a really, really key moment in figuring out where the country is going to go.
Ambassador Bhutto, Nawaz Sharif was first Prime Minister of Pakistan in 1990. Is this the same man today?
Well, I suppose he has understood a number of things. He had time enough to reflect upon corruption and things like this that he was guilty of. And he will probably intend to rule the country in a different manner. Well, he is an intelligent gentleman, and he will know how to cope with the army, I believe. And there is only one solution for the future of Pakistan at the moment, is come to terms with its neighbors, all of them, try to finalize something with India, calm it down with the Afghans, and restore a relationship with the West that would not be with permanent explosions of anger and the use of militants to burn flags and such things. Well, I suppose a man such as Nawaz Sharif is able to understand that if he doesn't do that, the country is very close to an explosion.
But is he a prisoner of these dynastic politics, which again you don't see just in Pakistan. You see it as well in India and Bangladesh, parties where it's the same family always that has the leader.
It's the country that is the prisoner of dynastic policies and politicians. If you look at what there is on the shelves, what sort of political offer there might be, he is probably the only one that could manage to do something and come to terms with the military.
Ayesha Siddiqa?
Well, the thing is that Nawaz Sharif is a pragmatist. And the reason the military, the fact is that the military brought him back, also because, they saw him as they pushed him out, but then they realized that he may be the only answer in recovering, the country's economic and geopolitical fate. And he is being brought back in order to push back and to put the economy in place. The first agenda which will be on Nawaz Sharif's table is the economy, period, nothing else. And related to the economy means geopolitically, it means building bridges with the Middle Eastern countries like UAE, like Saudi Arabia. He has sufficient contacts to bring resources from there. Also, India. India is a big issue here, and how to be carefully go and talk to. Let me also remind you that General Bajwa, which is the previous army chief, when he agreed and the army under him agreed to build fences with India, Imran Khan had backed out and completely taken a U-turn on that. He wouldn't go along. Nawaz Sharif is progressive when it comes to regional relations, and he will try to build those relations definitely. I think where he needs to be careful of, what Nawaz Sharif needs to be careful of, is not step on the military's toes. So his previous government, 2013 to 18, he took the previous dictator, General Musharraf, to court. He should avoid doing that with General Bajwa or the former ISI chief. He's very upset and angry with them, Nawaz Sharif. He should also try to be careful in taking ownership of everything from peace with India to relations with China or relations with United States. He has to be careful. The fact of the matter is that Nawaz Sharif has landed himself in a model of governance where the army chief now sits on the table as far as investment and economic policy is concerned. The army chief is an advisory member of the Special Investment Facilitation Council, which is meant to bring money into Pakistan, foreign direct investment.
Would a Nawaz Sharif, as Prime Minister for the fourth time, be a leader of Pakistan or a glorified chief of staff?
Something in the middle. He'll try to carve a role for himself, and it depends how relations with the military go. Will they be, no one expects, at least I don't expect, that they're going to be smooth for 5 years. The question is, how smooth will they be? What kind of interference will they be? Will they let him make his economic policy? Will they let him select his economic and financial team? Will they let him? One of the major issues that Pakistan has right now is with Afghanistan. Afghanistan and Taliban is something which is almost completely out of Pakistan's control. So will the initiative be militaries, or will it be Nawaz Sharif's? How cocky will Nawaz Sharif be vis-a-vis? And he is a man who has sufficient standing in Punjab, which is the largest and most important province of Pakistan, to kind of, at least provide some challenge to the military. In the past, that has always ended up in his government getting sacked. Will it happen again? Will the chapter repeat itself? These are things that we need to look at.
Yeah, plenty of challenges indeed. Pakistan was on the brink of bankruptcy last July when the IMF approved a $3 billion lifeline, but it does feel like a stopgap, and it's not funding from the likes of China and Saudi Arabia that will help Pakistan face rising poverty or increasing extreme weather. After floods, now comes water scarcity and unusually dry and mild winter, has farmers worrying over crops in many parts of the country. Azim Ibrahim, the inbox is full. Again, we're talking as if it's a given that Nawaz Sharif will be the next prime minister of Pakistan. If so, can he, as you heard Ambassador Bhutto say, thanks to his experience, carve out a role for himself and navigate his relationship with the military?
Well, Nawaz Sharif has obviously had a number of attempts at this job, so I would imagine he's kind of learned his lessons and has managed to figure out how to navigate this space and not treading in areas that are basically reserved for the military, and that includes defence and foreign policy and regional partnerships. I think what the military would want Nawaz Sharif to do is focus exclusively on the economy and focus on more of the bread and butter kind of domestic issues. And if you remember, Benazir Bhutto said a very famous phrase when she was elected as a prime minister, that she was in office but not in power, and she had absolutely no idea what the military was doing, most of the time. And I think Nawaz Sharif would have figured this out by now. This is a country that's got some serious intractable problems. Inflation is running at over 20%. It's touched 29% just last year. As a population that is expanding very rapidly. It stands at about 240 million people right now. It's expected to reach over 400 million people by 2050, most of them young people in a country where illiteracy is rife. And so this is going to be about the fifth largest country in the world in population terms. So got some serious challenges in terms of education and employment opportunities and economic opportunities for the younger people. So I think Nawaz Sharif's focus should be exclusively reserved to the economic area. And I think that is what the military expects him to do, is get a handle on that and get a control of that and leave all the other matters to the military itself, which is essentially defence and foreign policy.
And Azim, again, it's the question of having experience can be a plus or it can be a negative, again, in the context of this dynastic politics where it's harder to be in touch with that youthful population, that youthful constituency of the country. Why is it still this dynastic politics that rules throughout the Indian subcontinent?
Yeah, well, this is actually one of the reasons why Imran Khan was one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why Imran Khan was popular. Is that, when people come to power in that part of the world, is India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, one of the first orders of the day is to try to maneuver to get their sons and daughters, their members of the family, into key positions. And Imran Khan had absolutely no ambition to do so. His two sons lived in England, and they had no ambition to actually enter into Pakistani politics. So kind of eliminated the dynastic kind of dynamic. And the same thing with Modi over in India. One of the reasons he was popular as well is because of the dynastic kind of enterprise that was set up by the opposition party in Congress. And so this is actually one of the fundamental problems within that part of the world, is that you have people that are essentially completely unqualified to hold some of these positions, and then are given these positions, and the first priority is simply to try to get their sons and daughters into positions. Many of them have never even had a job, let alone try to tackle some of the most intractable problems that these populations are facing.
Yeah, would you put Bilawal Bhutto Zardari in that category? He's 37, but he's been leading the party of the late Benazir Bhutto for more than a decade.
He's the youngest foreign minister in the world, and he's obviously a very capable young man. But would he have been in this position were it not for his family and his father and his family name. I think that's a question most people would probably understand the answer to, which is probably not.
Okay. You mentioned youthfulness in a nation where the median age is a mere 20.6 years. France 24's team spoke with young people divided over whether to cast a ballot on Thursday.
I am very disappointed, but still I am very hopeful as well. So these are little steps that you take to make a big difference. Okay, I will vote today. She's not voting. He will vote. Somebody else will vote. So it is going to be a collective and a collateral effort that we are going to make to build this nation up.
None of the leaders who have been in power have been able to improve our situation. It's only gotten worse with time. I'm disappointed. I'm a graduate and I sell popsicles. Young people who've studied have no future. They're ashamed of having to do odd jobs, even though they're highly educated.
Yeah, the man you were just listening to, Samin Mohsin Ali, has a degree in sociology. Again, it's the question of whether or not people will turn out. Officially, turnout was 51% last time.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, it remains a question because, I mean, you can hear the sort of despair almost in these voices because they don't feel like it will make any difference even if they do turn out. And that is a disaffection with politics on the whole, right? So it's very much a perception that this is a game of elite musical chairs, effectively, and which has very little to do with the well-being of people or their needs. And, you know, you've mentioned climate disaster, you've mentioned possible issues with crops going forward. All of these are issues that these people feel that politicians are out of touch with. And the dynasticism obviously doesn't help. And to add to the point about the leaders being dynastic, it's not just the leaders who are dynastic of the political parties. Dynasticism permeates all the way down. So whether it's a constituency politician or even a local provincial MPA, they are also dynastic. So it's not just the top leadership which is dynastic, it permeates all the way through. There's no local governments that have been effective or even haven't been allowed to last for any length of time. So people genuinely don't feel represented.
And Samin, we've been asking whether civilian politicians are out of touch. How about the military?
That's an interesting question. I think there is a sense of, Dr. Siddiqa can perhaps say more about this as well, but for the military, there's a huge concern about not just foreign policy and control over foreign policy, but also control over money. So, there was this comment about Nawaz Sharif having learned his lessons, but the problem with trying to fix the economy in Pakistan is also coming up against the fact that the military budget is what it is. And that's a very significant percentage of GDP. So how do you navigate dealing with an economy that is on the brink of collapse when you have such large sums of money going to the military? So is the military then going to say, yes, you can have our money? That's extremely unlikely. So, those kinds of butting heads will eventually come up as you try and improve the economy. And so the military's interests are definitely in stability, but, maintaining that level of stability and just, basic provision of basic services, not clashing with the IMF, not clashing and saying that the US is engaging in conspiracy theories, all of that will help with stability, but I don't know that it's going to go very far in terms of addressing the needs of people on an everyday level.
Is this your Jean-Yves Berthaud? If we turn back the clock 30 years, is it kind of a similar dynamic what we're describing?
Well, what happens nowadays is that really it seems that there is no economic perspective for Pakistan if they don't really take fundamental decisions. So, that's really, as I was saying earlier, I suppose the only way for Nawaz Sharif, who is an experienced politician and who probably understands that very well, is to finalize the base for a discussion with the Indians. The Indians are busy on their borders with Pakistan, but also with China, and they wouldn't mind. And so the time is kind of propitious to resolve in this direction. Now,
so you're saying there could be a thaw with India. Of course, that would have to wait until after India has its own general election.
Yeah, but it's going to take place this year as well.
In the spring, yeah.
And there's a strong expectation that there will not be much change in India. So Well, of course, there are problems because Modi has taken this decision to withdraw the constitutional provision regarding Kashmir.
Its special status.
Its special status, and that probably would have to find some kind of solution. But if that happens, well, that would alleviate the weight of defense in the budget of Pakistan, first of all, and could perhaps offer the possibility of allowing more funds for emergency for the population.
Ayesha Siddiqa, all the candidates, I've been looking at some of their comments on the campaign trail, talking tough when it comes to Kashmir. Of course, we remember the Nawaz Sharif who attended Narendra Modi's first inauguration. Do you see the same scenario as Jean-Yves Berthaud?
Well, what has happened is if you look at the election manifestos of all the parties, mainly Pakistan People's Party and Pakistan Muslim League, what becomes very clear is that they have highlighted significance of Kashmir, but they've also talked about, reversal of what happened on August 5th. So basically, they are taking a position which is a bit more than what was expected. Now, one expected from Nawaz Sharif that he was keen, he'd do trade, and that he would negotiate, he would talk about Kashmir, but not posit Kashmir as something which can stop or hamper, negotiations or relations with between the two countries. Now, what has been happening lately is that right before elections and right before we can even think of anyone taking and making government, the army chief, General Asim Munir, has actually laid out his foreign policy. And he says that he's not going to go back to the proposal or the formula suggested by his predecessor, the former army chief, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, and that India will have to restore statehood of Kashmir and ensure that the demographic shift, which was something which Indian government had decided on doing in Kashmir, which means anybody could come settle, buy property in Kashmir, that needs to be reversed. That needs to be reverted. Now, we know that one impediment is out of the way in the sense that the Indian Supreme Court has ordered the Indian government to hold elections. But the question of statehood, when will they do it? They will take the sweet time. Delhi will take its sweet time to do it. It's not going to do it because Pakistan wants it. And it's definitely not going to do it because a Pakistan which is resource deficient, which is economically in a poor condition, wants to do that. So I'm expecting that perhaps some track 2, some back channel conversations may begin around autumn this year, after Pakistan is done with its elections, after India is done with its elections, and the two governments are in place on both sides. But the question is, what will be the parameters? I don't think that the army chief is ready to allow Nawaz Sharif to really jump and say, all right, I'm going to have trade and let's move on. I think they will be much more restrictive, number one. That's important to understand. So he's not going to be controlling the foreign policy agenda there.
Not going to be controlling quickly because we're out of time.
Yeah. So I think that is a problem which we're going to be facing. And also a lot depends on what will be the dynamics of domestic dynamics between the new prime minister, supposing it's Nawaz Sharif, and the army chief.
All right, and that's, of course, something we'll have to watch. Ayesha Siddiqa, I want to thank you so much for joining us from London. I want to thank Samin Mohsin Ali in Birmingham, Azim Ibrahim in Chicago, Jean-Yves Berthaud, thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.
every week